I started playing Genshin in September of last year, and ever since, it's been one of my favourite games I've played, and I'm still currently playing. Although I'm not one of the longest playing Genshin players, I've still been playing the game a lot these past few months, and I feel like I know enough about it to make this comment. This whole Natlan controversy is really stupid. And if you're confused as to which one I'm talking about, because there's multiple, I'm referring to every single one. And I will go through each of these and tell you my point of view on it, which, who knows, might change your mind too. Now, the main thing that I wanted to talk about on this topic is the Natlan character designs and how their gameplay, quote, ruins the game. I have seen post after post of people talking about the advanced technology that these characters have in their gameplay and how it doesn't fit into the fantasy world of Genshin. And everyone can agree that Genshin is a fantasy game, right? Do you know what fantasy means? It means, quote, the faculty or activity of imagining impossible or improbable things. Do you think that in the real world we have motorbikes that can climb walls or fly? The point that I'm trying to make is that the items that they have are impossible in the real world. Though, considering we are making flying cars soon, maybe the flying bike isn't quite out of reach, but either way, it is still considered fantasy as it's not yet been created in the real world, if it even is going to exist in the possible future. I understand that the items that they use are based off of everyday things that you might find, like motorbikes or a DJ mixer or a gun. But it's not like any of the qualities that those items have in-game are anything close to what we can do in real life. I know that a lot of people see fantasy as almost a non-electronic place, but there's nothing that clearly states that fantasy has any limits with high technology. We have the Fontaine technology, which people consider fantasy as its exterior look is made up of gears and old-looking technological gadgets, which, because we have never lived in the era of which we did have these types of things, it's a fresh look and not so closely related to our current reality. And this is why people have a problem with Natlan. Because the items that they use resemble things from this era, it doesn't give off a strong feeling that it can't be something that we won't be seeing in reality, which I completely understand. But if you are going to comment on something like this, you need to understand what is realistic in the real world and what is not. And I can tell you that you won't be seeing someone riding a gun through the air in real life anytime soon, if even ever. Plus, it's not like Natlan doesn't have any redeeming qualities in a non-technical way. The Sacred Flame is a very unique thing for Natlan, which makes it stand out from the other nations. You have the Night Kingdom, the spirits, the buildings, and I know that some of you are about to tell me that this is why you think that the characters are out of place, because none of Natlan seems to show any kind of technological advancement on its terrain, buildings, or their NPCs. And to that I have to say two things. One, if you don't like the fact that the characters have high-tech resources, then why do you want the nation to also have that kind of capability? You can't win against an impossible solution. If they were to add these things into the in-game world, then I'm almost positive that nobody would be happy with it. And if they didn't, people would still be unhappy. Two, there can be many reasons as to why the nation doesn't have these advances. It could be that the phlogiston has been restricted to only being used for necessary purposes like fuel and anything that they needed resource-wise to fight the Abyss. We already know that these items that Jalonin has made are fueled by phlogiston, which further backs up my claim. It could also be that the nation doesn't feel it's necessary to have such advancements for everyday life. If they already have all the resources that they need to survive, then they have no need nor desire for anything more. You can clearly see that these people very highly respect and appreciate the wild, so they don't want to exploit what the environment has to offer just because they want an easier lifestyle. Onto the actual character designs rather than the gameplay. Now, there is some controversy on specifically Chaska, Auroron, and biggest of all, Mavuika, the Archon of the nation herself. There's even a controversy surrounding all of Natlan's melanin choices, which I'll get into in a moment. I want to start with Auroron, since this is the most obvious one that I've seen and the quickest to explain. Natlan is a very hot nation, which should also be an indication that they should be wearing clothes matching the weather forecast, but as you can see, Auroran doesn't quite fit the criteria, which I can agree is questionable. I also think this is most of the reason why people dislike this design, since I'm almost positive that if he had something slightly different, then he wouldn't look much different to some other fan favourites in similar gacha games. I'm very aware that some of you might point out Kenichi's choice of clothing as well, but his clothing is a lot more breathable than Auroran's, since it doesn't tightly fit on the body. Moeka is more focused on the side of being sexualized, as well as the fact that she's wearing a leather bodysuit in a hot climate. While I love Moeka's design, I must admit that the only thing her design fits into is the fact that she rides a motorbike, minus her hair. Even the motorbike gear can easily be changed to, again, a more breathable outfit to better match the nation's heat. Every Archon so far that we've met has met the criteria of matching with their nations, with both climate and design. And Moeka's met the design, not the climate though. So although a lot of people are slandering her for everything about her design, it's really just a matter of how much heat she can actually take before getting hot. Think about it like this: if she's the Pyro Archon, then surely she would have some resistance to heat. Not only that, but she does also tell us herself that the flames in her hair can be dangerous depending on what emotion she's feeling. So if they were to be dangerous, then she would have resistance to it. The sexualization is a bit more tricky to counter, however. In this case, I feel that it's how you personally see the game. Some people, like myself, tend to not really notice these types of things and frankly don't massively care about the situation, since, again, we don't really notice it, and it isn't a distracting property on the character for us. But for other people, it can be, which is where it can become a reasonable problem for some people. In Moeka's design, the most obvious problem is that her zip runs all the way down her back and up her front, which is quite inappropriate if you understand the capabilities of what someone can do with that knowledge, which is why I say that it's based on the person, on how much you can care about it. It's also more about how deep you're willing to think about it. If you don't really pay attention to it at all, then it can almost just slip out your mind and it's not a problem. But if you think about it too much, that's where it becomes an issue. I personally didn't actually realise the zip on her at the time until someone pointed it out to me, so from my perspective it wasn't quite in my face, but for others it does feel like it was, which is why I am at a standpoint. But there was a similar problem with Raiden Shogun at the time of her release, which I think doesn't need much explanation when looking at her burst or drip marketing. But it's not like we still talk about that anymore. It's no longer an issue to people. It's been there for so long, it just almost becomes non-existent that there was even a problem in the fandom about it. And it will happen here with Moeka too, especially since it's nowhere near in your face as Raiden. Talking about sexualization, I should probably also mention Citlali's. We can all agree that her drip marketing was absolutely without a doubt fan service. There was no need for them to place that plushie so close to her chest. But when people talk about how Citlali was more flustered with Aether than Lumine when they got the romance novel for her, it gets more out of hand than it needs to be. She doesn't have many people that she talks to and isolates herself quite a lot. And if she is straight, then I completely understand why she might be so flustered towards Aether. It's a compliment from a guy that you wouldn't usually expect to get, as from your point of view, you aren't a fun person to be around, and the fact that someone does want to spend time with you, namely a boy, then yes, you can feel that kind of feeling. I know this because I'm also quite isolated from the world due to my own personal life, and also feel the same way when a boy gives me attention. So I don't feel it's out of the ordinary or fan service. Now I've left Chaska for last because it brings up my other problem of having more melanin. Everyone was unimpressed by Chaska's design because of the colours that were chosen for it, since a lot of people felt that it was mismatched. I don't personally feel like there's a problem with the red and blue, but more the fact that she is also animo and is a very light colour in skin. Having red, blue, black, practically white, and teal is a lot. If she was a hydro, or even possibly changing the blue to match the teal, would look a lot better, or my favourite, if her skin colour was a little bit darker. These colours would match perfectly with a higher melanin tone and was a massive loss of potential. I'm not saying that she needs to be a darker skin tone, I'm simply saying that it would have been one of the options that would make her character feel less overwhelming. But Chaska being a higher melanin tone isn't completely out of the reasonable expectation that we should have had. Like I've said before, this nation is very hot and would be very easy to tan in, so I find it extremely hard to back how it can be reasonable to make all of these characters with almost no melanin. One character doesn't make up for the other 8 characters and more coming. It's very disrespectful and is not a great look for Genshin. Unfortunately, it's all down to the fact that it's a catchy game. Most don't even have anyone with melanin in. I've also recently been on other games, such as Wuthering Waves and Honkai, which I'm also aware is made by Hoyoverse, and they have the same problem. Nothing we can do about it, so we just have to accept that this is the way it is with these games, and just hope that one day it will change. I hope I changed your mind on a few of these things today, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next video.